Weencast, a Ween podcast with Shane and Rory.
Hey, what's up? This is Shane.
And this is Rory.
And this is Weencast. And we welcome you to a new episode.
Yes, welcome everybody. How's everyone doing tonight?
We hope that your summer is in full effect and everyone's doing well. Before we get into the show from our youth that we're going to talk about tonight, kind of going to go back to an old school episode.
Oldie but goodie. Oldie but
goodie. We wanted to mention, check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/Weencast podcast. We're trying to do a little bit more with providing some exclusive content on there, all kinds of fun stuff. So go on Patreon, check us out, sign up, be a patron. We want to say thank you to all of our current patrons, and we just keep trying to get more and more cool shit on there for everyone to check out and make it a real cool vibe on Patreon. So check us out.
Yeah, no, the Patreon's awesome. We got a couple exclusive episodes available only on Patreon, as well as some other bonus material for some episodes and whatnot. So definitely check that out. It's pretty awesome.
Also, one more thing before I forget. I'm excited to announce the Weencast Summer Spectacular Ween Fan Story Contest. That's right. We want your Ween fan stories. Finalists will be presented on an upcoming episode of our podcast, and the winner not only comes away with the most honor, but also will receive an awesome, handcrafted cutting board branded with a cool boobnish. We'll have pictures on the socials, but what we're doing is partnering with a small company outside of Philly called West Brandywine Woodworks, and they're providing the awesome, handcrafted boobnish emblazoned cutting board. The Weencast Summer Spectacular Ween Fan Story Contest works like this. In an audio recording, tell us your wildest or coolest or raddest or whatever Ween fan story. 5 minutes or less. This could be a crazy story about something that happened at a Ween concert, or maybe an off-the-wall tale of how you first heard Ween, or really any personal story you have that has to do with Ween. Submissions can be in WAV or MP3 format and must be emailed to weencastpodcast@gmail.com. The deadline is Monday, September 7th, Labor Day, and we are looking to present finalists and announce a winner later that month. Awesome. There'll be more details available on our socials, and you're welcome to email us if you have any questions. Weencastpodcast@gmail.com. Looking forward to hearing some of your stories soon.
Totally. So for this episode, we're going to go back to another show that I was able to make it to, but Rory, you weren't able to make it to this one.
No, sadly, yet again, this era, dude, this was like when you first took your lead on me, and because there's a couple other shows as well from this time period that, for one reason or another, I just didn't get my butt to. So I totally regret this one.
I would say the main reason is because, you went to college right out of high school and I didn't. So that's pretty much the main reason. It's like, well, Rory was in college, so it's not exactly, it's not exactly something to be proud of. It's like, I just have more free time on my hands.
Sure, I was also broke, so that probably played into me not getting to go to. And, state college is further away as well, so I wasn't as close.
Right. Yeah, not as cool stuff going on in and around the state college area. But so we are going to talk about March 23rd, 2001.
What's up, people? My name is Sean, and I'm the host of You're Not Listening, a podcast where we teach you how to actively listen to music one song at a time. Every episode, I sit down with my father, who was a mobile DJ for over 35 years, and we each bring a song to the table and talk about what makes it great, why you should listen to it, and why you should appreciate it through detailed analysis of the words and music, some personal stories that we might have with that, and hopefully will help you change your mind and get you listening to music in a little bit different way so you get a little bit more out of it. Subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you listen. If you love music and you want to figure out how you can love it even more, maybe even learn how to appreciate a song that you think you hate, it's You're Not Listening, a music podcast. Check it out. Thanks, everyone.
Hi, I'm Leah.
And I'm Beth Ann.
And we're She Will Rock You.
She Will Rock You is a bi-weekly podcast about rock history.
Each episode, we talk about an artist and their lives, but we do it a little differently.
You see, we noticed there was a lack of ladies hosting music podcasts,
So we wanted to fix it.
and here we are, two badass millennial ladies talking about rock music our parents wouldn't let us listen to.
As a bonus, you'll even get our beer recommendations at the end.
Find us wherever you listen to podcasts.
And remember, don't do drugs!
So this was the show at the Tradewinds in
Yes.
Seabright, New Jersey.
Yes, and I believe the only show ever at Tradewinds. They have only played there once, I believe. Is that correct?
Yeah, as far as Brown Bass is concerned, yeah, it's the only time that that they ever played the Tradewinds. So if you look at sort of like that time period, it's the beginning of the shows for 2001, which there is a full length tour that they're starting at this point, but it's only the second show. So there's one other one before this, which I'm not exactly sure. I've never been to the bar. I think it says Ottsville, PA. I remember it happening at the time and kind of being like really bummed out that I wasn't going to be able to go. Because basically both of these shows, from what I remember anyway, were just sold out like immediately. Okay. So
Wow.
this was, I was saying to Rory before we started the episode, this was the first time that I actually like left the house and went to the venue without having tickets in my hand. You know, it doesn't seem like such a crazy concept in these days with like, you know, cell phones and everything else. But back in those days, I mean, you were definitely taking a risk. So I don't remember exactly how I had hooked up with this person. I think it must have been on like the original Ween forum, or what I would call the Ween news group. It was like altmusic.ween or whatever it was called. I can't remember exactly, but basically that was like the original like internet gathering place for Ween fans. So I think I had just gone on there and was like, okay, I need 2 tickets for the Tradewinds. Like, you know, anybody have anything, you know? And there was one guy who was like, yeah, I think, he must have had some other friends that like fell through on him or something. And he was like, yeah, like I'm going to be there by myself. And I got 2 extra tickets. So I swear it was just one of those things where it was like, meet me here at this time. Like back when you used to have that kind of an arrangement before, like, well, text me when you get there. It was like, no.
Oh, yeah. No, nowadays, no one plans ahead. You just, like, exactly right. Oh, text me when you get there. No worries.
Yeah.
This had to be set in stone,
Yeah.
in advance.
So I think it might have even been just like a few days before the actual show itself. And our friend Matt, otherwise known as K-Dog, who we went to high school with, and great friend of ours. And, he was, I wouldn't say he's as maybe as hardcore of a Ween fan as we were, but just like one of those dudes who's always like up for a good time. You know what I mean? And I think I might have just called him and was like, hey, like if I can get us 2 tickets for this show, like, are you able to make it? Like, do you want to go? And he's just like, hell yeah, So I'm like, sweet. So we had just sort of like, we must have kind of like thrown it together at the last minute. You know what I mean? Like one of those kinds of things. Like if we're just going to go meet up with this dude, he supposedly has the 2 tickets for us, like, there's a possibility this whole thing could fall through, or whatever, but we just like took that chance.
Dude, that sounds like an adventure.
Yeah, man. I mean, now when I look back at it, it's like, yeah, this was back in the days of like, you're either going to go and you're going to go on an adventure and find out what happens, or, hey, you're going to sit at home, I guess, So me and K-Dog went, all right. He drove, okay. I'm pretty sure he had, and I had asked him about this within the last week or so, and I just sent him a text and just said, like, hey, man, you remember going to that show? He remembers going to the show. But I said, what car were you driving? Because I remember you driving, and he didn't even remember that. He was like, I think it was my blue Firebird. And I was like, that would make sense because I remember it was like a muscle car. So he had a blue Firebird that we drove, which is just a crazy like non-practical car.
I love that in your notes here it says sports car, and I'm just trying to figure out, like, is a Firebird really a sports car? Isn't it more of like a sporty car? Can someone give me clarification on that? Like, what's the line? Like, when does a sporty car become a sports car?
Yeah, right. To me, it was like a sports car because it was just like you sat fucking low to the ground. You know what I mean? One of those kinds. And there was like, you know, if you're over like 5'5", you're gonna hit your head on something. You know what I mean?
And it
One
had
of those
electric windows.
Oh yeah, power window. Yeah. Power windows, front wheel drive. You know, yeah. You know, so he drove his car down, and this is in Seabright, New Jersey, okay? Which it was the only time in my life I've ever been to Seabright. If you're familiar with the Jersey Shore, this is barely it, because this is when you look at a map, this is as far north of the Jersey Shore as you can get before it's like you're in New York. Okay? But this is a legit beach town, as in water on both sides. You know, this is not just on, you know, on the edge of the water. No, like, this could be it's like, you know, it's an island, exactly. You know, you look one way, it's blackness. You look the other way, it's blackness. That's what I remember when we got there. It was dark. You know, this is still, you know, the end of March. So, you know, by the time we got there that night, it was dark and everything. But it's also where Tony Soprano also bought his beach house. And if I was up on my research, I'd be able to tell you like what the episode number was and all that nonsense. But the episode where he almost buys that beach house, that was Seabright, New Jersey. Okay.
Nice. When was that show on? Because how does that relate to the timing of this show? This is 2001.
You know what? That's a good question. I'm pretty sure it was during that period, because I think The Sopranos started in like the late 90s, like 1999, if I'm not mistaken. So like it was probably on like then. It was probably on at that time. I don't know if that episode had happened. I don't think so. I think that was one of the later ones. That was one of the later seasons, but yeah, that was probably on at the time.
If we're playing the Kevin Bacon game, does this mean that Seabright can be used as a way to connect Ween to people in The Sopranos?
I don't see why not.
All right.
I mean,
well, that's why I just wanted to clarify that.
Hell yeah.
Nice. Anyway, I'm sorry you're telling your story of.
No, not at all. So basically, our whole thing was like, find this guy. His name was Jimmy. All right, find him at his hotel and buy these tickets. And it's like, it sounds and it felt at the time so like seedy that like, oh, we have to find this hotel. I mean, anytime there's like a hotel room involved, it's like, it's just above, you know, nonsense level. You know what I mean? It's just above board. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it feels shady, even if it's not. I mean, you're meeting a guy named Jimmy, you know, in the town where Tony Soprano bought his beach house, you know? Hey, you gonna meet this guy named Jimmy, at the motel.
I mean, when you put it like that, I mean,
meet him at the motel just off the jug handle.
But from what I remember, I think the hotel was like right across the street. You know what I mean? Because I mean, you got to remember, like, it's a beach town, so like, you know, there's a lot of hotels, motels, you know, stuff like that from back in like the 50s and 60s. So I think it was really like right across the street. So we went and found this place pretty easily, but I also remember we had to like wake him up. So now we're at this motel and we're like knocking on the door like endlessly, and it's like, oh shit, like what? And you know, I drug, you know, Matt along with me to this thing, so I'm like shitting my pants, like what if this guy doesn't really exist, or like what if he's just gonna murder us or something? Like I would feel terrible. You know what I mean?
You would feel terrible if he murdered you.
I mean, I wouldn't mind it myself because I brought it on myself. You know what I mean? But for Matt, it's like he doesn't deserve it. You know what I mean?
Going to your grave, that would be your last thoughts. Be like, sorry,
right.
Sorry, K-Dog.
Yeah, right. I would just feel guilty. So anyway, so we found this guy's hotel, and we knocked on the door, and finally he answered, and I think we had woke him up. But he was real cool and everything. He invited us in, and we kind of bought the tickets, and I think he was like, okay, either come back here like before the show start, because I think we might have had like an hour or like 2 hours or something like that. And he's like, either come back here and get me, or like I'll just meet you over there like when it's about to start or something like that. So I think me and Matt just like took the tickets, let this guy go back to bed, and went and got some food and came back. And then I remember kind of walking like across the street with the three of us and then waiting outside. So the Tradewinds, that was the only time I had ever been there, up until then or since. And basically it's sort of like one of those places like right on the water where if it would be like the middle of summer, it would probably be, amazing. Like
just open air. Just they open up the big plastic windows and roll everything back, and it's like
right, exactly. But this is still the end of March, so everything is all like inside, and everything is just kind of like buttoned up. Exactly like you said, like the one whole wall was just like plastic because it's like that's what comes down, and then it's just the beach is right there when it's nice weather. But everything is still closed up and pent up and everything.
Yeah.
And just an absolute like mayhem type of show because it was just like packed. I mean, this place probably held, maybe like 350 people, 400 people, maybe a little bit more than that. But I mean, just talk about crammed. So we had gotten there and we were sort of like let in like as the doors were opening. I think we were in line of maybe the first like 50 people or something like that. So I remember getting like a good spot on the floor on sort of like the Diener side, but just like shortly thereafter, it just got like packed. And it was like one of those shows where like if you're trying to get like anywhere, you're just going to be rubbing up, people in front of you, people in back of you. You're going to be like on top of people. One of those kind of shows, So
yeah, dude.
Yeah, definitely like a small place that, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it's like that's kind of what you, especially back in those days, it's like that's what you wanted. You wanted to get in on like those small shows.
And that's getting, I think, rarer and rarer too because they start to play a little bit bigger venues. And so I could see how that would just be packed to the gills. A smaller place would sell out pretty easily, especially at that time. I mean, they're I think they're still gaining popularity. The White Pepper era, and the
right.
5-piece band and everything, and they're just exploding on the live scene. And so I could totally see that just being packed to the gills, and them just squeezing in a few more people here, a few more people there. Is that true for every club or bar in New Jersey? They're all just like always super packed. Because I seem to remember the other New Jersey show I went to was super packed.
It's funny because that's one of the other things I remember about that night actually is I think Matt and I had gotten like separated at one point. Like, he went to the bathroom and got like a drink or something and came back and like found me. And I think I just said something like, man, this is way too full or something. Like there's just too many people in this room. And, and him just saying like, oh, I was just talking to another guy and he was saying that every club in Jersey is like this. And I was like, really? Like, how is that possible? But I mean, it is the most overpopulated state. And, I mean, that's basically like a hometown show for Ween.
Yeah, dude, that's not far. That's not far at all from New Hope,
Right.
Sort of southeastern, eastern PA area. That's totally not far at all.
Anything in like the state of New Jersey is just like, that's considered to be like, a hometown show for Ween, I think.
Yeah, I would roll with that. More or less.
So
it's their wheelhouse. That's that area.
Right.
Pennsylvania, New Jersey, the border. The borderline. New Hope versus Lambertville. Who shall prevail?
So that kind of takes us to the beginning of the show. Should we you want to go through the set list?
Yeah, dude, I'll read the set list for you, for us. All right, so we got Exactly Where I'm At, She Wanted to Leave, The Grobe, Baby Bitch, Tick, Waving My Dick in the Wind, Papa Zit, The Stallion Part 5, Voodoo Lady, Squelch the Weasel, Back to Basim, Marble Tulip Juicy Tree, Albino Sunburn Girl, Push the Little Daisies, Ocean Man, Birthday Boy, The Mollusk, Take Me Away, Dr. Rock, Touch My Tutor, Pumpin' for the Man, The Going Gets Tough from the Get-Go, I'll Be Your Johnny on the Spot, Buckingham Green, Spinal Meningitis, Homo Rainbow, Enter Sandman. Yes, I said that correctly. Enter Sandman. You Fucked Up. And then we got the first encore. We got Frank, the HIV song, Tender Situation, Drifter in the Dark, Stroker Ace, the Blarney Stone. It just keeps going. And you got the second encore. You got the Final Alarm and Buenos Tardes Amigo. So
Wow.
that is pretty interesting and cool set list.
You know, and I didn't remember that it had 2 encores until we went back and started doing some of the research for this show.
Oh yeah, totally. That's crazy, dude. A double encore? That's like
Yeah.
such a rare thing. So that's, you know, when I say interesting and awesome set list, I mean, we'll get into all the nitty gritty. There's a lot of crazy shit going on in this set list. And,
Yes.
and that's one of them, you know. So double encore is just crazy.
So the first and foremost thing about this show and this tour, and you know, we're not here to to speculate or anything or as to why this happened or whatever. You know, that's the business of the band. But no Glenn.
Well, and you know, I would say I would like, I don't want to maybe speculate myself, but I am curious. So if any, so I'm happy to if anyone knows anything about the Glenn situation for this tour, I would love to hear it.
So basically, like if you're not aware, you know, for shows from this tour, Glenn was not in the band. So basically, and this is going to sound so stupid, I know, but there are only 4 members performing the show, and
yeah, they didn't get a replacement person on the keyboards.
Right.
It's just no.
So
Glenn.
it's not
no
like they
keys.
just had. Yeah, it's not like they had somebody else just like filling in for Glenn. It's just like there are just no keyboards for this particular tour. So if you stop and think about it, again, it sounds so stupid when you say, yeah, okay, well, there's one less guy, so there's 4 guys. It's like, but stop and think about it for a second. So on the songs where Jeaner isn't playing guitar and he's just on vocals, there's only 3 dudes playing instruments. That's it. I mean,
Yeah, totally.
and, you know, this is a badass show. You know what I mean? Like, you know, I hate to, you know, say this because I love Glenn and I love, you know, the keyboards of Ween and everything, but they don't miss a beat without him. This is an amazing show.
I agree. They sound really good. You can tell that Glenn is not there, and definitely there's evidence of it, and you notice in some songs, but not necessarily to the detriment. Like that's still an amazing show.
Right.
And I would say that Jeaner, Aaron, I would, not that I counted, but it seemed like he maybe was playing more guitar than normal, you know. So I think you know, it's interesting how they make adjustments, you know, and so.
Right.
That's another thing about this set list is there's definitely some conspicuous songs missing, I think, from like the Glenn, you know, repertoire. You know, it's like, first off, we are on the tail. We are just on the tail end of the big White Pepper tours, right? White Pepper was released less than a year earlier, and yet there's only 4 White Pepper songs on this. And I think a big part of that is because Glenn was a huge part of White Pepper. If you listen to we have an episode on White Pepper, and if you listen to that, then we talk about that. Glenn has a huge role in White Pepper. And so Pandy Fackler is a big time Glenn song that was played a lot during this time period, not this tour, not this show. and then also Bananas and Blow is another huge one.
Right.
As well as Ice Castles, even though Ice Castles is not as popular, it's not as played as often. But those other two, I mean, so there's absolutely adjustments being made, and I think it's not just that they didn't play as many White Pepper songs. It's also a shift in the types of songs they play kind of throughout the whole show, really.
Totally, man. Totally. It's basically a little bit more of just like them as just like straight up like rock band. You know what I mean? In some of the more recent shows, we keep talking about like, well, there's not as many jam outs. It's like, this is a pretty good example of like a show from that era where like there isn't as many jam outs because there's no keyboard, and it's like, no Pandy Fackler means there's no 10-minute Pandy Fackler. You know what I mean?
Totally. And I got the sense throughout the show that Diener, often was trying to make up for it, because man, does he shred it in this show. He really played the sombrero guitar.
Diener can always carry a show. You know what I mean? There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
So we were still in good hands that night, even without Glenn, but there's definitely a lot of cool standouts from this show as well.
Oh, absolutely. Tons of good shit. I mean, this show has a large number of uncommon and rare live songs, which I think we'll get to when we start to talk about the different songs. They also do a lot, I mentioned how there's a shift in sort of what they're playing. There's a lot of, like, this is like a raucous show. And you mentioned how the crowd it's packed, and it's like sardines in there, and this show is raucous. And so I just get this feeling that they're feeding off, that they made this decision because there's no Glenn, that they're going to shift to doing heavier, more raw, hardcore songs, like loud, fast metal songs. That was a deliberate decision without Glenn there. And then you have this packed, raucous New Jersey crowd, and I just feel like they're feeding off of that for this show. And so it's really this awesome synergy of the type of songs that they're playing and how hard the crowd's rocking, and how
totally,
hard they're
man.
Rocking,
And what happens at the end of the show? Double encore.
Yeah, dude. Why? Yeah, dude, that's wild. Double encore. I want to say we talked about this recently, but I'm trying to think of another show that had a double encore, and I'm kind of blanking at the moment. There's not a lot, so it's like, damn, 8 total songs and encores to have the legendary double encore. That's like what gives you hope. That's like what gives you hope every show, that even after an encore, you're supposed to sit there and keep clapping and stomping your feet,
Yeah, the fact
legendary
that, like,
double encore.
Yeah, like it has happened. It could happen again, that sort of thing.
Yeah, totally. Totally.
Well, should we talk about some highlights?
Yeah, dude.
Again, and I don't want to harp on this, too much, but like, there's a couple of things that are just going to be like really different, and like without Glenn, and stuff that they play every night. The first kind of like standout for me, I would say, is Voodoo Lady. Now there again, I mentioned, there's not as many like jam outs. Voodoo Lady's no exception. So basically, like, it's a cool version and everything, but there's just not as much to it. Like, there's not really like the like sound effects and like stuff like that. So it's like the first one that's sort of like, when you're going back and listening to the show, that sort of like, jumps out as being like kind of different,
Instead of Diener and Glenn playing off each other for the whole, like, bridge and the whole jam part of that song, you really just have, Diener absolutely shredding it. I mean, this is still a great version of Voodoo Lady, and I feel like this show and the last few shows that we had gone to, they managed to play Voodoo Lady a little different each show, and even though it's a commonly played song, it still manages to stand out. Both because you can notice that Glenn's not in it, but also because Diener just freaking takes over. And
totally.
It's, you don't get the back and forth, but you just have Diener just plowing right ahead.
Right. So, and I'm sorry, I kind of skipped over even before Voodoo Lady. Well, let me go back even further. So you got the 5th and 7th song, Tick, and then you got Waving My Dick in the Wind, and then Papa Zit. It's like Tick and Papa Zit. It's like, oh man, that's just like the old school Godween Satan like rock shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, dude. There's a good amount of Godween Satan on this show.
Right. And like you were saying, it's like you got a raucous show, like a raucous crowd, like boom, they're just hitting it right off the bat with, let's just get down to it. And then after Papa Zit, the Stallion Part 5. So, and I think Diener even says before they started that, okay, this is fairly new. This is only the second time that it's been played.
Yeah.
So,
that's awesome.
and I didn't go back and look at the set list from the show right before this, but I'm assuming that was the first time it was played, was that night. And they just started unrolling it at that tour. But that's the last Stallion. That's the last.
Yeah, dude.
The Stallion Part 5. And you know what? I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say I'm pretty sure that's my favorite. And I know that's kind of sacrilege, especially Stallion Part 3 from Pure Guava, but I mean, Stallion Part 5 is kind of hard to beat.
It sounds like another episode idea. Discuss the Stallion.
Yeah.
But that's just what a great, this is a perfect example of what we're talking about with this show. Tick, Waving My Dick in the Wind, Papa Zit, Stallion Part 5. It much more
right.
intense, sort of upbeat, sort of in your face songs. And then Voodoo Lady is like a jam, and so and Diener shredding it. And then he follows that up with Squelch the Weasel, which is like a rarity. It's only ever been played 82 times.
Right.
Papa Zit's 113, the Stallion's 62. So there's a lot of uncommon stuff here. But what a that's like 6 songs in a row where it just really shows you like what this show's all about. Like they're gonna rock.
Yeah, man.
And it keeps going back to basic. Marble Tulip Juicy Tree is not exactly a common song.
No, and there again, you're going back to like some old school shit. You're going back to Godween Satan.
Yeah, dude. No, so that's awesome. Yeah, Albino Sunburn Girl. That's only the 3rd time ever that was played.
It's crazy to think about. And that's now that you mention it, I do think that was it must have been the first time that I ever heard it, and listening to the bootlegs of this show is probably what got me to know that one, and Stallion Part 5, for the first time, so it's great going back and looking at the set list for this,
Yeah, dude. No, and that also just reminds me to just forever show my appreciation to the tapers out there, because you learn so much from the live shows that to be able to listen to them over and over again is such a treat and such a treasure.
Totally. So. And when I was going back and listening to this one recently, I was just like, well, no, Glenn, they won't do the Mollusk, but they did. So the Mollusk is the 17th song. And, somehow, some way, it still has the sound effects like, and I don't know how they did that. I don't know if that was like something that's pre-recorded. That's just like, like the beginning drums of Exactly Where I'm At for the start of the show. How that is just sort of like pre-recorded. I don't know.
Well, I wouldn't put anything past Ween. I mean, they used to go on tour with just 2 of them in a DAT deck.
Yeah, it's very true. I mean, it's I don't know. It's like, oh, okay, the Mollusk does still have. It doesn't have like the crazy like Glenn like that. It doesn't have all that, but it still does have what I would refer to as the bubbles.
Yes.
So somehow they pulled that off.
Hit a button here, hit a button there.
Somebody's hitting some kind of button.
Yes, a button is going off.
Right. So just another like rock block. You got Dr. Rock, Touch My Tutor, Pumping for the Man, and then I'll Be Your Johnny on the Spot. Not quite as rocked out as usual for obvious reasons.
Yeah, and then Buckingham Green is another one where you notice that Glenn's not there, but it's still great nonetheless.
Right.
Because he's definitely part of that. Buckingham Green's a very kind of like this epic song with this sort of apocryphal moment that Glenn is a big part of. But it's still rocked out, and Diener, like you said earlier, can carry a show.
Right. And then after that, you got Spinal Meningitis, Homo Rainbow, which again, that's always a great song to hear live.
Yeah, it's a rarity, and it's always a treat.
Yeah. And then after that, fucking Enter Sandman by Metallica.
Dude, that's awesome. I was playing this for Amy. I was playing this show for Amy as I was getting ready, and when I heard Enter Sandman come on, I like paused it and rewound it, and I was just like, Amy, come check this out. It was awesome.
It's almost to me like they're kind of acknowledging the fact that there's no keyboard, and what are we without the keyboard? Well, we're just a fucking rock band, aren't we? You know what I mean? And it's like, what are we going to do without Glenn? What are we going to do with no keys? And it's like, well, let's just do some Metallica shit. It's like one of those things that's, I don't know, like a life imitating art kind of moment or something. It's just so brilliant. You know what I mean? I don't know.
No, dude, and it's funny because Jeter is really like making his voice like he's like the devil. He's like, like he probably had a hard time speaking the next morning just from that song, and and it's fantastic. And Diener has a great solo in it, and it's funny because it's totally a Ween, like a Diener solo. It's not a Metallica solo, but it's still really awesome. They jam it, dude. Enter Sandman is that's good.
I mean, it's almost like the furthest thing that you would guess Ween would play when you're talking about like cover songs that they might break out. You know what I mean? Like, I could sit for a million years and not think that they would have done Enter Sandman. You know what I mean? Like, it's just so far from something that I would see happening, but there it was.
Well, and it's a perfect, example of this, like, this abrupt turn that they're making during this tour just after White Pepper, but without Glenn. I think like songs like, what popped in my head was they had done a cover of Led Zeppelin, All of My Love, I think it was.
Right.
And, and that's, I'm just thinking of Glenn because there's like those, like there's like the organs in that song and stuff, and it's like, and that's like that's Ween doing a cover with Glenn, and this is, like, we're gonna say, oh, it's like oh, all you people thought we sold out when we did White Pepper. Well, guess what? We're gonna do some metal shit here.
I mean, it's just fucking like, what's the embodiment of like a hard rock band? Well, it's fucking Metallica. Like, let's get some fucking Metallica going.
Yeah, dude. No, and it's great because it's like Jeter's voice just really makes you feel like this part. It's half send up of the heavy metal genre and like half serious.
Right. It's like, is it supposed to be funny? And it's like, well, it doesn't sound that funny. It sounds like it's fucking great. It's like... So if you weren't a Metallica fan, which I wasn't, and I'm really not a big, Metallica guy, but they're going to win you over with this one, So...
Dude, I had the Metallica album on tape. I got that.
Nice.
In fact, my younger brother we got in a fight, and he put it out the window in a bank of snow. It still played after that, though.
Oh yeah, right. It survived. Yeah.
Because it's
that's
that
all that
hardcore,
matters.
Because it's Metallica. It's that hardcore.
Right. If it was a lesser band, the tape wouldn't have made it. But since it's a Metallica tape, it survived the snow.
It had that cool coiled snake on the cover.
Yeah, right.
That you could almost you just barely could see it because it was a black cover. I'm sorry, I'm taking us on a tangent, but...
No. I mean...
Yeah, but Enter Sandman, that's just great. They nail it too. I mean,
let me just say real quick, since we're bringing up Metallica memories. So my older brother was a big Metallica guy before the Black Album, and he would pretty much have considered that to be like their like sellout album. Like he was a big Ride the Lightning guy. So
nice.
yeah, so like, and I was too young, at the time to like, that was like, oh, that's bad music, like like stay away from him when he's listening to that stuff. Like, ooh,
yeah, you're gonna listen to Metallica and play D&D and do some devil worship.
But I don't think he ever really got into the Black Album because I think that it was like, oh, fucking sellouts, man, like. But I can speak for him that he was into Metallica even before the Enter Sandman era. So that's one from my older brother Craig.
Hey, I'm just gonna say enough hating. Enough with the hate.
Yeah. No hate, right? No hate. So yeah, and then after that it's You Fucked Up, and that's the end of the first set. That's the end of the main set. So talk about raucous, man. I mean, forget it.
Yeah, instead of going the jam route at the end of the first set, they go with these, Enter Sandman and then You Fucked Up. It's like a total change from what you might normally expect at the end of the first set.
Right. So then they come back and they do Frank, which I always love.
Oh my God, this is a great version of Frank.
Absolutely.
They're both jamming. Aaron's jamming on this. They're both playing like guitar back and forth during the solo. It's really good.
Yeah, totally. HIV song Tender Situation, which that's another sweet rendition.
Yeah, and Uncommon song.
And right, and fairly uncommon. And then you got Drifter in the Dark. So, and not only is that also uncommon, they break out special guest Chris Harford. And that's another kind of like New Jersey thing. Hometown show. You got like the other like members of like the Ween fam, and
yeah, totally.
let's get him out here, So Drifter in the Dark goes a little off the rails, but that's part of the fun. It was the same kind of thing when we saw him do it in Pittsburgh. Drifter in the Dark is a very just kind of relaxed and like mellow kind of thing, and it's like if it stays together, great. If not, it's all good.
Well, Jeaner does some really, he like melts into that harmonica,
Right. I mean, he definitely brings it on harmonica, but it seems like Drifter in the Dark is one of those ones that always kind of seems to like, okay, are we going to keep going with it? Or are we going to end it? Or it doesn't really.
It drifts in the dark.
It drifts. There you go. Right. It just goes adrift, So, but it's cool that they got Chris Harford to come out and do some backup vocals, on that one.
Yeah, dude. Well, and speaking of special guests, the first encore ends with Stroker Ace and Blarney Stone, and who else but the Reverend B.L. himself up there shredding it on Stroker Ace with
the Reverend B
side by side with Diener.
Yep, the Reverend B. And Diener even says when he brings him out, from the Sound of Urchin. You know what I mean? So I don't know if this is the first time that one of us saw him where like Urchin actually gets a shout out. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, dude.
Yeah, that's great. The old days.
Yeah. So the Reverend B comes out and they do the last few songs. And then again, I didn't remember that there was a second encore until I went back and listened to the show again. But like, I have to wonder if they were actually planning on that happening or not, or if it was just the crowd just wouldn't stop. And, I don't know. Like, and the lights just didn't come on. So the crowd's just going to keep going. I don't know. But they come back out and they do the final alarm, which is fucking awesome. Yeah. And another rarity, really.
Yeah, dude. I actually just quick looked. This was only I want to say the 17th, 18th time that was ever played. So 17th. So that's pretty early on in the final alarm, history.
Right. And then close it off with Buenos Tardes.
Oh, dude. That's one of my favorite show enders. Buenos Tardes, amigo, baby. This is a great rendition, dude.
You can't go wrong. You can't go wrong.
No, Buenos Start, it's sort of like you slow it down, get everyone to chill, and it's just like, and it's a really awesome song that a lot of people think is just like a joke rock, but it's actually like a serious story of, jealousy and revenge. And there's this, also, I mentioned earlier that Jeaner was jamming on Frank, but he does a massive jam on this song on the acoustic guitar. The solo jam in the middle is like a lot of that's Jeaner on this. And so that's just awesome because, you don't see it all the time, like Jeaner like playing such like a big role with the instrument. And but he's good,
Right.
man. And it's like he's awesome when he's on point. And so it's just
Totally.
awesome to hear it because then you're just reminded that he's got a lot of talent, dude. Like not just, you think of Jeaner as like a singer, vocalist, and a songwriter, but he's also can rock out on the guitar, dude.
Absolutely. A good Jeaner solo is definitely a sweet thing. The one thing that kind of jumps out at me is like, look at how many songs of this set list are not from just like a traditional Ween album. So like if you just had like those CDs that came out at the time, which was very possible, because I think that's probably the majority of us that were at that show. That's pretty much all that we had access to. I mean, I was listening to a lot of the bootlegs and stuff, but I mean, look at how much of this stuff you wouldn't have known about or you wouldn't have heard unless you were like a real hardcore fan. I mean, first of all, The Stallion Part 5, right? Albino Sunburn Girl, Homo Rainbow, Enter Sandman, and then The Final Alarm. So it's like there's a bunch of songs on this show that like jump out at me as being, like new or B-sides or, obviously everyone knows Enter Sandman, but stuff that's not the traditional Ween songs from one of the albums.
Totally. Yeah, dude, it's a wide variety of just, rare, cool shit like going on in this show.
Yeah.
It's really cool, really impressive. For missing some of the big jam songs, there's no Can't Put My Finger on It, Reggae Junkie Jew is missing, right? And others too. It's just such a cool set list, and one of the things that I love about Ween is how they'll throw different set lists at you,
Right,
And
absolutely.
So and yeah, I know that, they play a lot of songs from Chocolate and Cheese and the Mollusk, every show. Like those are always, yes, there's a lot of common songs, but man, like this show is just a great example of when they decide to really mix it up. And so this show I think is really mixed up. It's a really mixed up show.
Right.
A lot of variety.
Right. Yeah.
Is how I
and a lot of
might
just
think
like
of it.
yeah, a lot of just cool rare cool rare shit.
A lot of random old stuff.
Yeah, I have a couple of other just like random memories for like specific songs. If you listen to our interview with the amazing taper Fred Moore, I had mentioned this was the first show I remember seeing him. I don't think I had actually spoke to him that night, but I have a distinct memory of them playing Marble Tulip Juicy Tree and just seeing this dude just rocking out. Like, you know how there's a difference between when your eyes are open and your eyes are closed at a concert? Like, eyes closed, not even looking at anybody. Just there
in the groove.
By himself in the groove. I have a distinct memory of seeing him for the first time, rocking out to Marble Tulip Juicy Tree and just being like, who the fuck is that guy?
Well, and he concurred that it was a pretty, raucous, wild, packed, crazy night.
Yes.
So that was his remembrance of it as well.
Right. So he definitely remembers that show pretty well. And then the other thing that I remember is when it got to be towards the end, the end of the first encore is the Blarney Stone, and I think both Matt and I had kind of gone back and were in front of one of the bars. There was a couple of different bars that you could go to, sort of like one on each side, if I'm remembering it correctly. And I just remember like a couple of bartenders looking at each other as everyone is doing the and them just looking at each other like, what the fuck is this? You know what I mean?
That's
and just
awesome.
the whole place is just, gone crazy with just like this pirate song. And these people that have no idea of this music just being like, what the fuck is going on, man? I remember that and just laughing my ass off at watching these people like experience this. So that was a fun memory.
Well, and what's great about that is that, Blarney Stone is like one of the last songs of the night. And so
Right.
they've been listening to all this crazy shit all night, and then the Blarney
Yeah.
Stone comes on, and they're like, what the hell is this?
Yeah. Yeah. But I just remember the entire place just be like everyone singing along to Blarney Stone and just being completely into it. And just a great moment,
Well, that's like, so I'm looking at, and here's a shout out for the Stallion Mang for his YouTube page, because he's got the video of the show on. But it comes in at 2 hours and 42 minutes, and that's probably not including all of the downtime between encores, But,
Right.
But yeah, so we're talking about probably total amount of time, almost 3 hours. And so by the time they're doing Blarney Stone, that's like 2.5 plus. That's like they've been jamming. People have been there for a while, sweating it up.
Yeah, check out this show on YouTube, and I don't think I had even realized until, within the last couple of weeks where we're going back and re-listening to this show that there was a video. That was a video that I never had. I just had the CDs of this show, and I don't think I ever realized that there was a video that was made that night. But it's really good. It's a really great, capture of that night. So you can watch the whole thing on YouTube, and you can listen to just a playlist on of the audio on YouTube as well. Boognish Monster. I think Colleen or Cooleen, as I'm gonna say it, runs Boognish Monster now. But yeah, so just a great video that was made that night, and I never had that one. I never had a VHS or a DVD of that show.
Yeah.
I just had the bootleg CDs.
Yeah, no, it is pretty cool. Thank goodness for YouTube, and thank goodness for the people recording it and the people putting it on YouTube.
Yeah, totally, man. So
It's
I
like
mean,
the
it's
circle
definitely
of life,
it's definitely one that you can easily access and go back and listen to. So, but yeah, man, I think that's about all my memories. I mean, it's tough when you're talking about the No Glenn era, but also, those shows, had their place, and they're automatically going to be a lot more rock and a lot more like raucous, and this was a good start to that tour.
I mean, so yeah, if people have insight on the Glenn situation, I would love to hear if there's something to it. But it's interesting because, like you said, this is a part of Ween. It's like a different facet of Ween to not have Glenn there. And so what I would say to anyone out there, like, especially if you like the heavier rock, the speed metal side of Ween, the brown, you like a little more hardcore, like old brown stuff, this is definitely the show you want to check out. Like, this is definitely your freaking cup of tea. And I would say, if you love Glenn, like I love Glenn, he's gone, he's not in the show, but it's still a fantastic show. So I got to say that him being absent on this show does not hurt the quality of the show, because the show takes on its own identity. It's like it takes on a new identity for Ween. So great show, and especially if you're into that harder side of Ween, highly recommend checking this show out.
Absolutely, well put.
And I would also just say, like, gosh darn it, like, why was I missing these shows back then? And I'm down. I'll have to do the count to see if this puts you up 1, 2, or how many. I guess this is 2 shows at this point. But anyway, I'm bitter. But anyway, it's always a bummer when and then there'll be some shows coming up that I went to that you didn't. So tit for tat,
Yes.
I guess.
Yeah, there will be shows where you're going to take the helm, and I'm ready to hear some good stories.
Yeah, totally.
Well, anyway, so my shout out to our friend K-Dog for going with me to this one and for driving us there and back, and to Jimmy for hooking us up with the tickets, and to Fred for being in my memory forever. Memory burn of Fred, of that, of, like I said, seeing him. Maybe I at least said like, "Hey man," like, or so, "Hey, I'm Shane, nice to meet you," or something. But I know we didn't have like a conversation or anything that night. But I specifically remember seeing him and him rocking out that night. So shout out to those dudes. So I'm very happy to have gone and to made it to this one unscathed, unmurdered. We didn't get murdered or anything.
Get murdered in Seabright by the Sopranos, by Jimmy.
Right, by Jimmy or the Sopranos. So it was a win-win for us that night.
Yeah, you got out of Jersey. You made it home alive. It's always a good thing.
If anyone out there has...
I kid. I love Jersey. I kid.
Yeah, right. If anyone out there has a story for this show, we'd love to hear it. Hit us up. Again, patreon.com/Weencast podcast. All the socials, Facebook, Instagram. Send us an email, man. Weencastpodcast@gmail.com. You know what I mean? I want to hear it. I want to hear some stories.
Yeah, man. Let us know what you think.
If this was your first show, I want to hear the story, man. So that's all I got.
Yeah, dude. No, hit us up, people. Thank you for listening. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll catch everyone soon.
All right, later.
Peace.